The Galactic Council's emergency session had been going for 3 hours when Admiral Zexthak finally slammed his four-armed fist on the crystalline table. The sound echoed through the massive chamber, silencing the dozens of species representatives who had been arguing in 17 different languages. Enough, the Krathan military leader roared, his chitinous exoskeleton gleaming under the chamber's harsh lights. The Void Hunters have already consumed 12 star systems. They're moving toward the core worlds at unprecedented speed. We need action, not more debate. Senator Yelana, a graceful being whose translucent blue skin rippled with bioluminescent patterns, stood slowly. As one of the eldest members of the council, her words carried weight. Admiral Zexthak speaks truth. The situation grows more dire by the hour. Our combined fleets have failed to slow their advance. A collective shudder ran through the assembly. The Void Hunters were unlike any enemy the galaxy had ever faced. They appeared from the dark space between stars, consuming entire worlds not for resources or territory, but seemingly for the pure joy of destruction. Their ships defied known physics, their weapons turned matter itself into nothingness, and their numbers seemed endless. Our intelligence reports indicate they'll reach the Terran system within 72 hours, announced General Mortek, his reptilian features grim. Perhaps it's time we inform the humans of what's coming. The chamber fell silent. Earth was one of the newer members of the Galactic Council, having joined only 50 years ago. Humans were considered primitive by most species standards, still using chemical rockets and projectile weapons when they first made contact. Their technology had advanced rapidly since joining the galactic community, but they were still viewed as the galaxy's youngest children. The humans? Scoffed Commander Velran, her crystalline form chiming with derision. What could they possibly offer? They have no battle experience against threats of this magnitude. Their entire military consists of patrol ships and defensive platforms. Admiral Zexthak's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Actually, the human military record is quite interesting. They've resolved several piracy issues in their sector with remarkable efficiency, and their psychological profiles show unusual patterns. Unusual how? Senator Yelana asked. They seem to have an abnormal response to impossible odds, the Admiral explained, consulting his data pad. Where most species would retreat or surrender when facing overwhelming force, humans tend to become more aggressive. Our xenopsychologists call it spite-based combat syndrome. The discussion was interrupted by the chamber's main display flickering to life. The image showed a star system on the galaxy's edge, where the Void Hunters had just arrived. The assembled representatives watched in horrified silence as the alien ships, each the size of a small moon, began their work. The system's star flickered and dimmed as the attackers somehow drained its energy. Planets cracked and crumbled into cosmic dust. Within minutes, an entire solar system that had supported billions of lives simply ceased to exist. 71 hours, General Mortek updated grimly. Senator Yelana made the decision that would change everything. Send a priority transmission to Earth, inform them of the situation, and request immediate military assistance. Several representatives began to protest, but she held up a hand for silence. We've tried everything else. The Zathari battle matrix failed. The Velnan quantum torpedoes proved useless. The Mortek planetary shields lasted exactly 4 minutes. Perhaps it's time to try something different. The transmission was sent immediately. The response came back within hours, much faster than anyone expected. The reply appeared on the main screen, showing a middle-aged human woman in what appeared to be a simple military uniform. Her short brown hair was streaked with gray, and she had the kind of weathered face that spoke of decades of experience. Her name tag read Colonel Martinez. Galactic Council, she began without preamble. We've received your request for military assistance against the Void Hunter threat. We understand the severity of the situation and are prepared to help. Admiral Zexthak leaned forward in his chair. Colonel, we appreciate your willingness to assist, but you should understand what you're facing. These entities have destroyed everything we've thrown at them. Our most advanced weapons are useless. We're essentially asking you to sacrifice your fleet. The human woman's expression didn't change. Admiral, we appreciate your concern. However, we believe we can handle this situation. A wave of shocked murmurs swept through the chamber. Commander Velran's crystalline form flashed with indignation. Colonel Martinez, with all due respect, your species has been part of the galactic community for barely 5 decades. You have no experience with threats of this magnitude. Colonel Martinez smiled, and something about that smile made several representatives unconsciously lean back in their seats. Ma'am, humans have been dealing with impossible situations for our entire history. It's kind of what we do. What forces can you deploy? Senator Yelena asked diplomatically. We're sending our best, the colonel replied. Should be sufficient. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the council chamber in confused silence. That was brief, General Mortek observed. Admiral Zexthak was already pulling up Earth's military records. According to our files, humanity's entire space navy consists of approximately 200 vessels, mostly light cruisers and frigates. Their largest ship is barely 800 meters long. Against the Void Hunters? Commander Velran chimed in disbelief. Those creatures travel in ships that dwarf our largest dreadnoughts. This is madness. But Senator Yelena was reading something else on her personal display, her bioluminescent pattern shifting to colors that indicated deep thought. There's something in the human cultural files that's interesting. They have a military tradition called David and Goliath, man. What does that mean? Admiral Zexthak asked. It's about a small warrior defeating a giant enemy through cleverness and determination rather than raw strength, she explained. Apparently, it's a recurring theme in their history and mythology. The chamber's attention was drawn back to the main display as updated sensor readings came in. The Void Hunters had consumed another system, and were now definitely heading toward the galactic core. Their trajectory would take them directly through human space. 68 hours, General Mortek announced. As the session adjourned, none of the council members could have predicted that within 3 days, they would be asking Colonel Martinez for backup stretchers rather than weapons. The galaxy was about to learn why humans had a reputation for doing the impossible, one dead Void Hunter at a time. Commander Sarah Chen stood in the observation deck of the UES Defiance, watching the last of Earth's defensive fleet assemble in formation. 20 ships. That was humanity's entire contribution to stopping an enemy that had already consumed a dozen star systems. Ma'am, Lieutenant Rodriguez approached with a tablet. Final crew manifests are complete. All ships report ready for departure. Sarah nodded, her eyes never leaving the viewport. Each ship in the formation represented years of human engineering and innovation, but they looked pitifully small against the backdrop of space. The largest vessel, the Defiance itself, was barely a quarter the size of a standard Galactic Council cruiser. Any word from the Council about fleet coordination? She asked. Admiral Zexthak sent coordinates for the rally point at Kepler Station, Rodriguez replied. He's assembling what's left of the combined galactic fleet there. Apparently they want us to form up with the rear guard. Sarah almost smiled. The rear guard. They were being politely told to stay out of the way, while the real military handled things. She couldn't blame them. On paper, Earth's fleet looked like a collection of patrol boats trying to stop a tsunami. Ma'am, the communications officer called out. Incoming priority transmission from Earth Command. The main screen flickered to life, showing General Patterson in his office overlooking the rebuilt Pentagon. Behind him, through the massive windows, Earth looked deceptively peaceful in the afternoon sunlight. Commander Chen, the general began. I trust your fleet is ready for deployment. Yes, sir. 20 ships, full crews, all systems green. General Patterson nodded. The council is expecting us to follow standard engagement protocols. Long-range bombardment. Coordinated fleet movements, the usual approach. Understood, sir. The general leaned forward slightly. Sarah, you've read the intelligence reports on these Void Hunters. Their ships are the size of cities. Their weapons can disintegrate matter at the molecular level. They've destroyed everything the galaxy has thrown at them. Yes, sir, I'm aware. Good. General Patterson's expression grew deadly serious. Now forget everything I just said. You know what needs to be done. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Lieutenant Rodriguez looked confused, but Sarah knew exactly what the general meant. The official plan was for Earth's fleet to play it safe and follow galactic military doctrine. The real plan was something else entirely. Rodriguez signaled the fleet. We're adjusting our approach vector. Ma'am? We're not going to the rally point, Sarah announced to the bridge crew. We're going straight to the Void Hunter fleet. The bridge erupted in voices as officers tried to process what they'd just heard. Chief Engineer Kim was the first to speak up. Commander, with respect, that's suicide. The intelligence reports say they have over 100 ships, each one massive beyond anything we've ever seen. Exactly, Sarah replied. They won't be expecting us. Navigation Officer Torres pulled up the tactical display. Ma'am, even if we achieve complete surprise, our weapons aren't rated for targets that large. Our heaviest plasma cannons might scratch their armor. Sarah moved to the central command console and activated the fleet-wide communication system. All ships, this is Commander Chen. I know what you're thinking. Our mission appears to be impossible. The enemy outnumbers us, outguns us, and has already proven they can destroy anything the galaxy throws at them. She paused, looking around the bridge at faces that showed everything from determination to barely concealed terror. But here's what the Void Hunters don't know about humans. We don't fight fair. We don't follow the rules when the rules don't work. And we absolutely refuse to give up no matter how impossible things look. On the tactical display, she could see the other ships in the formation adjusting their positions. The captains might be scared, but they were moving into attack formation. The Galactic Fleet is going to engage these things in traditional ship-to-ship combat, Sarah continued. They'll maintain proper distances, use coordinated firing solutions, and follow established military doctrine. They'll also lose, because that's exactly what the Void Hunters are prepared for. She activated the fleet's tactical planning system, displaying a three-dimensional representation of the enemy formation based on the latest intelligence reports. We're going to do something different, something crazy, something that no rational military commander would ever attempt. Her voice carried across all 20 ships. We're going inside. The reaction was immediate. Ship-to-ship communications lit up with questions and concerns. Sarah let them talk for a moment before continuing. Each Void Hunter ship is the size of a small moon, but that means they have massive internal spaces, hangar bays, reactor chambers, command centers. They're designed to fight other capital ships at long range, not to repel boarding actions. Lieutenant Rodriguez was staring at her in shock. Ma'am, you're talking about ramming our ships into theirs. Not ramming, Sarah corrected. Boarding. Each of our ships carries a full complement of Marines and enough cutting charges to breach any known armor. We get inside their ships, we find their weak points, and we tear them apart from the inside out. Chief Engineer Kim was already pulling up structural analysis reports on his console. It could work, he admitted reluctantly. If their ships are as large as reported, they'd have to have internal atmosphere in the inhabited sections. Our people could operate inside. The casualties will be enormous, Torres pointed out. The casualties will be everyone if we fail, Sarah replied grimly. Look, I'm not going to lie to you. This is probably a one-way trip for most of us. But if we can take down even a few of their ships, if we can show the galaxy that these things can be killed, then maybe the combined fleet can finish the job. She activated the secure communications link to each ship's captain individually. I'm not ordering anyone into this. Every ship can choose to follow the original plan and meet up with the Galactic Fleet. But if you're willing to try something that's never been attempted before, something that violates every rule of space combat ever written, then follow me. For a long moment, space was silent. Then, one by one, the ships in the formation signaled their acknowledgement. Captain Martinez of the UES Relentless was the first to respond. Ma'am, my crew and I didn't join the Navy to play it safe. We're with you. Captain Thompson of the UES Vengeance followed. These things want to consume our world? They can try. We'll give them indigestion. Within minutes, all 20 ships had confirmed they were staying with the plan. Sarah felt a mixture of pride and terror wash over her. These people were trusting her with their lives, betting everything on a strategy that existed nowhere in any military manual. All ships, adjust course for direct intercept with the Void Hunter fleet. Maximum burn. We go in fast, we go in hard, and we make them remember that humans don't know when to quit. As Earth's small fleet accelerated toward an enemy that had already proven unstoppable, none of them knew they were about to start a legend that would be told across the galaxy for generations to come. Sergeant Major Williams crouched behind a makeshift barricade inside what had once been a Void Hunter command chamber, reloading his rifle while energy blasts scorched the air above his head. The interior of the alien ship was unlike anything in human experience. Massive corridors that could accommodate buildings, walls that seemed to shift between solid metal and something that looked like crystallized darkness, and an atmosphere that tasted of copper and decay. Contact front, Corporal Jackson called out from the left flank, his voice echoing strangely in the vast space. More of those slug things coming through the breach. Williams peered around the barricade and immediately understood why the Void Hunters had been so successful against conventional fleets. The creatures weren't just using ships, they were the ships. Each vessel was a living organism the size of a city, with the smaller entities acting as its immune system. Fighting them wasn't ship-to-ship combat. It was more like performing surgery on a hostile patient the size of a mountain. "Henderson, get that satchel charge ready," Williams barked to his demolitions expert. "We need to take out that neural cluster before more defenders show up." The human boarding plan had worked better than anyone had dared hope. Earth ships were small enough and fast enough to slip through the Void Hunters' defensive screens, designed as they were to stop massive capital ships. The aliens' weapons couldn't track targets moving at close range, and their point defenses were useless against ships that were already inside their defensive perimeter. But getting inside was only the first step. Now Williams and his team were fighting through the bowels of an enemy ship that defied every law of biology and physics they understood. "Charges set," Henderson called out. 30 seconds. "All teams fall back to the extraction point," Williams commanded, but even as he said it, he knew they weren't going anywhere. The path they'd used to get this deep into the ship was now crawling with Void Hunter organisms, each one the size of a tank and twice as mean. Private Martinez popped up from behind a fallen structural beam. "Serge, we got a problem. The way out is blocked. Those things are trying to heal the breach we made." Williams cursed under his breath. They'd known this was likely a one-way mission, but he'd hoped to at least complete the objective and get some of his people out alive. The ship around them shuddered as explosions echoed from other sections, telling him that other human teams were facing similar situations throughout the massive vessel. 30 seconds. "Sergeant Major," Henderson called out. Through his helmet's communication system, Williams could hear radio chatter from teams spread across multiple Void Hunter ships. The humans had managed to penetrate 7 of the massive vessels, each team fighting their own desperate battle in the alien structures. "Team 7 to all units," came the voice of Lieutenant Chang from somewhere in the ship's lower levels. "We've found what looks like a power distribution center. The whole thing is biological. Looks like a giant brain connected to plasma conduits." "Team 3 here," replied Captain Foster from another section. "We're seeing similar structures. These things aren't ships in any sense we understand. They're alive and we're fighting their nervous system." Williams felt a grim satisfaction. They might not survive this, but they were learning things about the Void Hunters that no one in the galaxy knew. Information that could save billions of lives if it got back to Earth and the Galactic Council. "All teams, this is Team 1, he broadcast. "Henderson's about to blow the neural cluster we found. If these things are as connected as they seem, you might want to brace for impact." 10 seconds, Henderson announced. The Void Hunter organisms seemed to sense what was coming. Their attacks intensified, energy blasts and some kind of acidic projectile filling the air around the human positions. Williams could see his team's armor smoking where the alien weapons had struck. 5, 4, 3, 2. The explosion was unlike anything Williams had ever experienced. It wasn't just the physical blast, though. That was enough to knock them all flat and crack his helmet's faceplate. There was something else. A psychic scream that seemed to tear through his mind like razor wire. The massive chamber around them convulsed like a living thing in pain. The organic walls rippled and shifted, and the Void Hunter organisms suddenly stopped attacking. Instead, they seemed to be writhing in agony, making sounds that no human throat could produce. "What the hell did we just do?" Jackson asked, his voice shaky. Before Williams could answer, the ship's movement changed. For the past hour, he'd felt the steady acceleration of the vessel as it pursued its targets. Now that acceleration was becoming erratic, the ship lurching and rolling like a wounded animal. "Team 7 to Team 1, Lieutenant Chang's voice crackled through the radio. "The power center down here just went dark. Whatever you guys hit, it's affecting the whole ship." Williams looked around the chamber and realized that the bioluminescent panels that had been providing light were flickering and dimming. Emergency lighting was kicking in, but it was clearly a backup system. "All teams, report status," he ordered. The responses came back one by one. Team 2 had successfully destroyed what appeared to be a weapons control center. Team 4 had found and damaged a massive organ that might have been responsible for the ship's faster-than-light travel. Team 6 had taken heavy casualties but managed to contaminate what looked like the ship's food production system. Through the ship's hull, Williams could feel vibrations that suggested similar actions were taking place on the other Void Hunter vessels. Explosions, structural damage, the shuddering of massive organisms in distress. "Surge," Henderson said quietly. "Look outside." Williams moved to where a human-made breach in the hull provided a view of space. What he saw made him stop breathing for a moment. The Void Hunter ship wasn't just damaged, it was dying. Parts of its hull were going dark as biological systems shut down. Atmosphere was venting from multiple breaches, carrying with it what looked like organic debris. But more importantly, the ship was no longer pursuing its original target. It was drifting, its massive bulk slowly tumbling as its control systems failed. "My God," Martinez whispered. "We actually heard it." Through the communication system, Williams could hear similar reports from the other ships. The human boarding actions weren't just causing damage. They were killing the Void Hunters from the inside out. "All teams, this is Commander Chen," came a new voice over the radio. "External sensors show 7 Void Hunter ships disabled or destroyed. The remaining enemy vessels are retreating. Repeat, the Void Hunters are withdrawing." Williams sank back against the alien wall, hardly daring to believe what he was hearing. They'd done it. A handful of human ships and their boarding parties had accomplished what the entire Galactic Council fleet couldn't manage. "Teams 1 through 6, Commander Chen continued. "We're sending rescue shuttles to extract survivors. Hold your positions and await pickup." As Williams looked around at his exhausted, battered team, he realized they were about to become the first humans to survive inside a Void Hunter ship. More than that, they were about to become legends. "Henderson," he said with a tired grin, "remind me to put in for hazard pay when we get home." The demolitions expert laughed, a sound that echoed strangely in the dying alien structure around them. "Surge, I don't think they make enough money for this kind of hazard pay." Admiral Zexthak stood frozen in the command center of Kepler Station, staring at the tactical display that showed something impossible. 7 Void Hunter ships, each one previously considered an unstoppable force of nature, were either drifting dead in space or limping away from the battlefield at sublight speeds. "Are these readings correct?" he asked his sensor operator for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. Lieutenant Yardok, a young Krathan officer whose shell was still soft with youth, nodded emphatically. "Yes, sir. All 7 ships have ceased their advance. 3 appear to be completely non-functional. 4 others are retreating at approximately 30% of their previous velocity." Commander Velran materialized beside the Admiral, her crystalline form chiming with what could only be described as confusion. "This is impossible. Our combined fleet was 3 hours out from intercept. The humans were supposed to join our rear guard. How could they have engaged the enemy alone?" The answer came through a priority communication from the human ship UES Defiance. Commander Chen's image appeared on the main screen, and Admiral Zexithak was surprised to see that she looked relatively calm for someone who had just performed what appeared to be a miracle. "Kepler Station, this is Commander Chen. We've completed our mission against the Void Hunter fleet. 7 enemy vessels have been neutralized. We're conducting search and rescue operations for our boarding teams." The command center fell silent. Senator Yelena, who had been monitoring the situation remotely from the council chambers, spoke first. "Commander Chen, please clarify. Are you saying that 20 human ships defeated 7 Void Hunter vessels?" "Affirmative, Senator. Though defeated might not be the right term. We boarded them and killed them from the inside. These things aren't ships in the traditional sense. They're living organisms. Cut out their vital organs and they die like anything else." General Mortek leaned forward in his chair. "Boarding actions? Commander, those vessels are kilometers long. How could you possibly board them?" "With respect, General, that's exactly why we could board them. They're designed to fight capital ships at long range. They never expected small, fast vessels to slip inside their defensive perimeter and ram through their hulls." Admiral Zexthak was trying to process what he was hearing. "Commander, our intelligence indicates that each Void Hunter ship carries thousands of defensive organisms. How did your boarding party survive?" "They didn't all survive," Commander Chen replied grimly. "We lost 60% of our people. But the ones who made it to the vital systems did their jobs. These creatures might be tough, but they're not invincible. Hit them in the right spots and they go down." The Admiral's tactical mind was already working through the implications. "You're saying that conventional space combat tactics are ineffective against these entities, but boarding actions can succeed?" "That's correct. The Void Hunters have adapted to fight the way galactic navies have fought for thousands of years. Long-range engagement, massive firepower, coordinated fleet actions. They're not prepared for someone to treat their ships like boarding targets." Commander Valron's form flickered with indignation. Commander Chen, what you're describing sounds like suicide tactics. No rational military doctrine would approve such methods. Commander Chen smiled, and Admiral Zexthak found himself remembering the human phrase about showing teeth as a sign of aggression. Ma'am, if rational military doctrine could stop the Void Hunters, they wouldn't have consumed 12 star systems. Sometimes you have to try something irrational. Before anyone could respond, the communication was interrupted by an urgent alert from the station's sensor array. The remaining Void Hunter ships, the 4 that had been retreating, had suddenly stopped their withdrawal. Instead, they were turning back toward the human fleet. Commander Chen, Admiral Zexthak said urgently, sensors show the remaining enemy vessels are resuming their attack. Your fleet is heavily damaged. You need to withdraw immediately. Negative, Admiral. We're not done yet. On the display, they could see the human ships moving to intercept the returning Void Hunters, but something was different this time. The human vessels weren't moving in standard attack formation. Instead, they were spreading out, approaching from multiple vectors simultaneously. Commander, Senator Yelena spoke carefully. Your previous success was achieved through surprise. The enemy will be prepared for boarding actions now. Yes, ma'am, they will be. That's why we're going to do something different this time. The tactical display showed the human ships beginning their attack run, but instead of attempting to penetrate the Void Hunter hulls, they were maintaining distance and firing what appeared to be modified boarding pods directly at the enemy vessels. Admiral Zexthak enhanced the sensor readings. Those aren't standard boarding pods. What are they launching? Automated mining charges, Commander Chen explained. Each pod contains a fusion-powered boring device designed for asteroid mining, modified with military-grade explosives. We don't need to board them this time. We just need to drill deep enough to reach their vital organs. The Admiral watched in fascination as dozens of small pods streaked toward the massive Void Hunter ships. The alien point defenses, designed to stop large missiles and energy beams, had trouble targeting the small, fast-moving projectiles. Most of the pods made it through the defensive fire. The boring charges will take approximately 15 minutes to penetrate to the depth needed to cause critical damage, Commander Chen continued. Meanwhile, our ships will maintain maximum distance and continue launching pods. General Mortek was studying the tactical data with professional interest. Commander, this strategy requires precise knowledge of Void Hunter internal anatomy. How could you possibly know where to target? Our boarding teams transmitted detailed scans of the ship interiors before they were extracted. We now know the location of major organs, power centers, and control systems in these creatures. The mining charges are programmed to seek out those specific target areas. As if on cue, the first series of explosions began to ripple through the nearest Void Hunter ship. Unlike the previous battle, where the damage had been internal and difficult to observe, the mining charges created visible external detonations as they reached their programmed depths. The massive alien vessel shuddered and began to list as its control systems were systematically destroyed. Within minutes, it was drifting dead in space, joining its 3 companions from the earlier battle. Incredible, Commander Velron whispered. They've weaponized industrial equipment. The remaining 3 Void Hunter ships attempted to scatter, but the human fleet had anticipated this. Each enemy vessel found itself targeted by multiple ships launching mining charges from different angles, making defensive fire impossible. Admiral Zexthak realized he was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic military history. Not just the defeat of the Void Hunters, but the development of entirely new tactics that no military academy in the galaxy had ever considered. Commander Chen, he said formally, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I want to thank you for your service. You've saved countless lives today. Thank you, Admiral. But we're not done yet. These 7 ships were just the advance force. According to our intelligence, the main Void Hunter fleet is still heading for the Galactic Core. We need to prepare for the real fight. As the last Void Hunter ship went dark on the tactical display, Admiral Zexthak found himself looking at humanity in an entirely new light. They hadn't just won an impossible victory. They'd rewritten the rules of how to fight an enemy that everyone else had considered unstoppable. Commander, he said slowly, what do you need from us for the next engagement? Just backup stretchers, Admiral. We're going to need a lot of backup stretchers. Dr. Elizabeth Kane stood in the medical bay of Kepler Station, watching as the latest batch of human survivors was brought in from the destroyed Void Hunter ships. As the station's chief xenobiologist, she had been tasked with examining the organic samples recovered from the alien vessels, but what she was seeing exceeded her wildest expectations. "Doctor," Nurse Patel called out, "we've got another one conscious. He's asking about something called the singing." Elizabeth hurried over to where Sergeant Collins was lying on a biobed, his eyes wide with an expression that seemed caught between terror and wonder. Like all the survivors, he had been exposed to the interior atmosphere of a Void Hunter ship for several hours, and the medical scans were showing some unusual readings. "Sergeant Collins, I'm Dr. Kane. Can you tell me what you remember about your time inside the alien vessel?" Collins turned to look at her, and she noticed that his pupils were slightly dilated. "Doc, those things, they're not just alive. They're connected. All of them. When we started killing them, I could hear them screaming across space." Elizabeth made notes on her tablet. This was consistent with what other survivors were reporting. Somehow, exposure to the Void Hunter ships was allowing humans to perceive some kind of collective consciousness among the aliens. "Tell me about the singing," she prompted gently. "It started after Henderson blew the neural cluster," Collins continued. "At first it was just noise, like static in my head. But then it became music, I guess. Terrible music. I could hear all the voices of everything they'd ever consumed. Billions of them." Dr. Kane felt a chill run down her spine. "You could hear the voices of their victims?" "Not just hear them, Doc. I could feel what they felt when they died. The Void Hunters don't just destroy worlds, they absorb them. Every consciousness they've ever encountered is still trapped inside them somehow." She looked around the medical bay at the other survivors. They all showed signs of the same phenomenon: dilated pupils, heightened awareness, and the ability to sense things that normal humans couldn't perceive. More importantly, they all seemed to be developing an intuitive understanding of Void Hunter biology and behavior. "Dr. Kane," came a voice from behind her. She turned to see Admiral Zexthak approaching with what appeared to be urgent news. "Admiral, I was about to send you my preliminary report on the survivors." "That may have to wait, Doctor. We've just received intelligence that the main Void Hunter fleet is larger than we originally believed. Our long-range sensors are detecting over 300 vessels approaching the galactic core." Elizabeth felt her heart sink. 7 ships had taken the combined effort of humanity's entire fleet to defeat, and they'd lost more than half their people in the process. 300 would be impossible by any conventional measure. "There's something else," the Admiral continued. "The surviving humans seem to be able to predict Void Hunter movements with uncanny accuracy. Sergeant Williams correctly identified the location of 3 enemy ships that our sensors hadn't detected yet." Dr. Kane nodded. "Admiral, I believe the exposure to Void Hunter neural networks has created a limited telepathic connection between our people and theirs. The survivors can sense the collective consciousness of the enemy fleet. Is this permanent? I don't know, but right now it might be our only advantage." The Admiral's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "Doctor, how quickly can you determine if this effect can be deliberately induced in other humans?" Elizabeth stared at him. "Admiral, you're talking about deliberately exposing people to an alien neural network. We don't know what the long-term effects might be. Doctor, if the main fleet reaches the galactic core, there won't be any long-term for anyone." Before she could respond, the medical bay's communication system activated. Commander Chen's voice filled the room. "All personnel, this is Commander Chen. We've just received confirmation that the main Void Hunter fleet will reach the Proxima system in 18 hours. They appear to be moving faster than our previous estimates." Elizabeth looked at the survivors around her. Each one was irreplaceable now. They represented humanity's only real intelligence asset against an enemy that had proven nearly impossible to understand. "Commander," Admiral Zexthak activated his communicator. "Dr. Kane believes the human survivors may have developed a telepathic connection to the Void Hunter Collective. They might be able to provide tactical intelligence for the coming battle." "Understood, Admiral. We're going to need every advantage we can get. The Galactic Council fleet is assembling at New Geneva, but even with every ship they can muster, we're looking at odds of 50 to 1. Dr. Kane made a decision that would haunt her for the rest of her life. Commander, I may be able to enhance the telepathic connection in the survivors. If I can increase their sensitivity to the Void Hunter network, they might be able to predict enemy tactics or identify weak points in their formation." "What would that require, Doctor?" "Controlled exposure to Void Hunter neural tissue. I'd be essentially performing experimental neurosurgery using alien biological material. The medical bay fell silent. Every survivor who was conscious was listening to the conversation, understanding exactly what was being proposed. Sergeant Collins spoke first. "Doc, if you can make me better at killing those things, do it." One by one, the other survivors voiced their agreement. They had seen what the Void Hunters were capable of. They had felt the collective anguish of billions of consumed minds. They knew that conventional weapons and tactics would not be enough. "Doctor," Commander Chen's voice came through the speaker. "You have my authorization to proceed with the experimental treatment. But I want volunteers only." Elizabeth looked around the room. Every conscious survivor was nodding their agreement. "Admiral," she said to Zexthak, "I'm going to need access to the organic samples we recovered from the destroyed ships, and I'll need your medical staff to assist with the procedures." As the Admiral hurried away to make arrangements, Dr. Kane began preparing for something that no human doctor had ever attempted. She was about to deliberately expose human brains to an alien neural network, hoping to create a weapon that could turn the tide against an enemy that had consumed stars. Sergeant Collins grabbed her arm as she prepared the first injection. "Doc, there's something else you need to know. When I was connected to them, I could feel something bigger than just the ships. There's something out there in the dark between the stars. Something that controls all of them." "What do you mean?" "The Void Hunters aren't the real enemy," Collins whispered. "They're just the scouts. There's something else coming. Something so big that it makes these ships look like insects. And it's hungry." Elizabeth stared at him, feeling a new level of fear settle in her stomach. If the Void Hunters were just the advance force for something even worse, then humanity wasn't just fighting for the galaxy. They were fighting for the survival of all consciousness in the universe. "Then we'd better make sure this works," she said grimly, preparing the first neural interface with alien tissue. Commander Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the combined galactic fleet assemble around New Geneva Station. Over 4,000 ships from dozens of species had answered the call, creating the largest military force in recorded history. It should have been an inspiring sight. Instead, all she could think about was how inadequate it seemed against what was coming. "Ma'am?" Lieutenant Rodriguez approached with a grim expression. "Dr. Kane's experimental procedures are complete. We have 43 enhanced humans ready for deployment." Enhanced. Chen tried not to think about what that word meant. 43 volunteers had allowed alien neural tissue to be implanted in their brains, creating a direct connection to the Void Hunter collective consciousness. The volunteers called themselves listeners now, and the look in their eyes suggested they were experiencing things no human mind was meant to process. "What's their status?" "Stable but changed. They're reporting detailed intelligence on the incoming fleet's composition, movement patterns, and what they're calling behavioral algorithms. Apparently, the Void Hunters operate according to very specific patterns that can be predicted once you understand their collective psychology." Chen nodded. "Any word on the main fleet's approach?" 12 hours out and closing fast. "But ma'am, there's something else." "The listeners are all reporting the same thing. The fleet isn't just coming to destroy us. They're coming to collect us. What does that mean?" Before Rodriguez could answer, the bridge communications system activated. Senator Yelana's voice filled the space, her usual calm replaced by barely controlled urgency. "All fleet commanders, please report to the strategy conference immediately. We have new intelligence that changes everything." The holographic conference room was packed with representatives from every species in the galaxy. Admiral Zexthak stood at the center, his usual confidence replaced by what Chen could only describe as stunned disbelief. "The human listeners have provided us with intelligence that fundamentally changes our understanding of the Void Hunter threat," he began. "Commander Chen, would you please share what your people have learned?" Chen activated her datapad, displaying information that still seemed impossible even to her. "The Void Hunters aren't just destroying civilizations, they're harvesting them. Every consciousness they've ever encountered has been absorbed into their collective network. They're not trying to eliminate life in the galaxy. They're trying to collect it." General Mortek leaned forward. "To what end?" "According to the listeners, they're preparing for something called the Great Convergence. All the consciousness they've collected will be merged into a single entity of unprecedented power and knowledge." Commander Velron's crystalline form chimed with distress. You're describing the forced evolution of all galactic consciousness into a single being. That's exactly what we're describing, Chen confirmed. And the process requires willing participation from the most advanced civilizations. They're not coming to destroy us, they're coming to convince us to join them voluntarily. The conference room erupted in voices as representatives tried to process this information. Senator Yelena called for order. Commander Chen, what advantage does this knowledge give us? The listeners believe they can disrupt the collective consciousness by introducing chaos into the network. If we can get enhanced humans aboard enough Void Hunter ships simultaneously, we might be able to cause a cascade failure in their collective intelligence. Admiral Zexthak studied the tactical display. You're proposing another boarding action, but on a massive scale. Not just boarding actions, Chen corrected. The listeners need to be connected to the network while the disruption occurs. They'll be sacrificing themselves to poison the collective consciousness from within. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. They were discussing the deliberate sacrifice of 43 humans to create a weapon that existed nowhere in military theory. How many ships would we need to target simultaneously? General Mortek asked. According to the listeners, at least 20% of the fleet. That's 60 ships minimum, and the timing has to be perfect. If the collective consciousness detects the attack and adapts, the opportunity will be lost forever. Commander Velron's form flickered with what appeared to be admiration. You're proposing to turn your own people into a virus that attacks their neural network. That's one way to put it, Chen replied grimly. Senator Yelena spoke carefully. Commander, this strategy requires the combined fleet to get close enough to the Void Hunter formation to deliver 60 separate boarding parties simultaneously. The casualties will be enormous. Yes, ma'am. We estimate losing 70% of the combined fleet, but if we succeed, we'll have eliminated the Void Hunter threat permanently. Admiral Zexthak was quiet for a long moment, studying the tactical projections. Commander, there's something you're not telling us. What happens to the listeners when they disrupt the collective consciousness? Chen met his gaze steadily. They die, Admiral. The neural feedback from a collapsing collective consciousness will kill them instantly. They know this, and they've all volunteered anyway. Why? Because they've experienced what the collective consciousness contains. Billions of minds trapped in eternal servitude, their individuality slowly being erased. They've heard the screams of entire civilizations begging for death. They're willing to die to prevent that fate from spreading to the rest of the galaxy. The conference room was quiet except for the soft hum of life support systems. Each representative was grappling with the moral implications of what was being proposed. There's one more thing, Chen continued. The listeners have detected something else approaching from deep space. Something that makes the Void Hunter fleet look insignificant. If we don't stop this incursion here, what comes next will be unstoppable. General Mortek was the first to respond. Commander, the Mortek Republic commits our full fleet to this strategy. One by one, the other representatives voiced their support. Within an hour, the largest military operation in galactic history was being planned around a strategy that violated every conventional rule of warfare. All ships will receive detailed tactical briefings within the next 6 hours, Admiral Zexthak announced. Fleet commanders should prepare their crews for what may be the last battle any of us ever fight. As the conference dissolved, Chen found herself alone with Senator Yelena. Commander, the senator said quietly, your species continues to surprise us. Most civilizations would never consider the tactics you're proposing. Senator, most civilizations haven't seen what we've seen. The listeners have experienced the collective consciousness directly. They know what's at stake. And what about you, Commander? Are you prepared to sacrifice your enhanced humans to save the galaxy? Chen looked out the viewport at the assembling fleet, thinking about the 43 volunteers who were preparing to die so that everyone else could live. Senator, humans have a saying, nobody gets left behind. We're not sacrificing the listeners. We're following them into hell to make sure they don't go alone. As the combined fleet prepared for what would become known as the Battle of New Geneva, none of them knew they were about to witness the birth of a new form of warfare that would forever change how the galaxy thought about consciousness, sacrifice, and the true meaning of victory. 3 months after the Battle of New Geneva, Colonel Martinez sat in the rebuilt medical facility on Kepler Station, reading reports that still seemed impossible even to her. The Galactic Council had officially designated her as the new director of xenological warfare. a position that hadn't existed before humans proved that the impossible could become routine. "Colonel," Dr. Kane entered the office with a data pad and an expression of barely contained excitement. "I have the final analysis of the Void Hunter specimens recovered from the battle." Martinez looked up from her. Reports about the galaxy-wide reorganization of military doctrine that had followed humanity's unconventional victory. "What did you find, Doctor?" "Something extraordinary. The collective consciousness wasn't just a communication network. It was an evolutionary mechanism. The Void Hunters were designed to collect and preserve the unique aspects of every civilization they encountered, then merge them into something greater than the sum of its parts." "Designed by whom?" Dr. Kane activated her datapad, displaying a complex three-dimensional model of what appeared to be a massive structure in deep space. The listeners picked up something during the final moments of the collective consciousness collapse. "There's an ancient civilization out there, something that predates everything we know about galactic history. They created the Void Hunters as a kind of harvesting mechanism." Martinez felt a familiar chill. Even in victory, it seemed humanity had only uncovered a larger mystery. "Are they still out there?" "The listeners think so. But here's the interesting part. The destruction of the Void Hunter collective consciousness sent a signal across the galaxy. Every species with telepathic abilities detected it. We essentially announced to the universe that someone had found a way to destroy a harvest fleet. Is that good or bad?" Before Dr. Kane could answer, the office door opened to admit Admiral Zexthak and Senator Yilana. Both looked like they were carrying news that would change everything again. "Colonel Martinez," the Admiral began formally. "We've received responses to the signal Dr. Kane mentioned. 47 different civilizations have made contact with the Galactic Council in the past week. All of them have been hiding from the Void Hunters for millennia." Senator Yilana stepped forward. "Colonel, it appears that the galaxy is much more populated than we ever imagined. Entire civilizations have been living in isolation, waiting for someone to prove that the Void Hunters could be defeated." Martinez set down her reports. "What are they asking for?" "They want to know how we did it," Admiral Zexthak replied. "They want to learn human tactics. More specifically, they want to learn how to fight impossible odds using unconventional methods. And," Senator Yilana added with what might have been amusement, "several of them have specifically requested backup stretchers." Despite everything, Martinez found herself smiling. The phrase had become something of a legend across the galaxy. When military commanders were faced with impossible situations, they were said to be calling for backup stretchers, preparing for casualties while refusing to accept defeat. "There's something else," Dr. Kane interjected. "The surviving listeners have retained their connection to what's left of the Void Hunter network. They're detecting movement in the deep space regions where the ancient civilization is supposedly located. Movement toward us or away from us?" "Toward us. But it's slow. They estimate several centuries before arrival. Whatever's out there is enormous and apparently doesn't move quickly." Admiral Zexthak's mandibles clicked with what Martinez had learned to recognize as deep thought. "Colonel, the Galactic Council has a proposal for humanity." "I'm listening." "We want to establish a new military academy dedicated to unconventional warfare, not just teaching human tactics to other species, but developing entirely new approaches to impossible problems. We want humanity to lead this effort." Martinez looked around the room at faces representing 3 different species, all of them looking to humanity for guidance in a type of warfare that hadn't existed a year ago. "What would this academy teach?" Senator Yilana answered. "How to think like humans when faced with impossible odds. How to turn weaknesses into advantages. How to find solutions that exist outside established doctrine. How to refuse to give up when any rational being would surrender. We're calling it the Institute for Applied Impossibility," Admiral Zexthak added. "The motto would be what humans do when they can't do something." Dr. Kane laughed. "That's not even grammatically correct." "That's exactly the point," the Admiral replied seriously. "Human success seems to come from approaching problems in ways that don't make sense to anyone else." Martinez stood and walked to the office window, looking out at the massive construction project that was taking place around Kepler Station. Ships from dozens of species were working together to build what would become the galaxy's largest military research facility. "There's one condition," she said finally. "If we're going to teach other species to fight like humans, we need to make sure they understand what that really means." "Which is?" Fighting like a human means being willing to lose everything to protect what matters. It means choosing to do the right thing even when the right thing is impossible. It means never giving up, even when giving up is the smart choice. She turned back to face them. Most importantly, it means understanding that victory isn't about winning. Victory is about making sure that the people who come after you have a chance to keep fighting. Senator Yelana's bioluminescent patterns shifted to what Martinez had learned indicated deep respect. Colonel, the council accepts your conditions. 6 months later, the first class of the Institute for Applied Impossibility graduated. The student body included representatives from 63 different species, all of whom had learned to think like humans when conventional thinking wasn't enough. The graduation ceremony was simple. No speeches about glory or honor. Instead, each graduate received a simple patch showing a human carrying a stretcher with the words "backup requested" underneath. As Martinez watched the new graduates disperse to their homeworlds, she thought about the listeners who had sacrificed themselves to save the galaxy, and the ancient threat that was still approaching from the darkness between stars. Humanity had taught the galaxy that impossible problems required impossible solutions. Now they would all have centuries to prepare for whatever was coming next. The backup stretchers were ready. Colonel Martinez turned to Admiral Zexthak, who was standing beside her at the ceremony. "Admiral, do you think we've prepared them for what's coming?" The Admiral's mandibles clicked with what she now recognized as confidence. "Colonel, 3 years ago, the Void Hunters were considered an unstoppable force of nature. Today, we use their own biology as teaching material for first-year tactics students. If there's one thing I've learned about humanity, it's that you make the impossible look routine. Even when we don't know what we're doing. Especially then," the Admiral replied with something that might have been humor. "After all, if you knew how to do something, it wouldn't be impossible, would it?" As the last of the graduates disappeared into the station's corridors, Martinez realized that humanity had accidentally created something unprecedented in galactic history, an entire generation of beings from different species who all thought like humans when facing the impossible. Whatever was coming from the deep space regions would find a galaxy that refused to accept defeat, no matter how hopeless things looked. It would be the last mistake the ancient civilization ever made.